My husband left me homeless at 53. I was starving and sold my blood for $40. The nurse went pale. Ma'am, you have golden blood. Only 40 people on Earth have it. Minutes later, a man in a suit rushed in. A billionaire is dying. Name your price. I couldn't believe the number. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. The plastic chair dug into my back, squeaking every time I shifted my weight. I tried to make myself smaller, pulling the cuffs of my silk blouse down over my wrists. It was the last nice thing I owned, a remnant of a life that felt like it belonged to a stranger, not the 53-year-old woman sitting in a plasma donation center in downtown Chicago, waiting to trade her bodily fluids for $40. The air smelled of stale antiseptic and unwashed bodies. To my left, a college student was violently tapping on his phone. To my right, a man with a hacking cough was staring at the ceiling. I was invisible here. Just another person down on their luck, needing grocery money. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the humiliation burning in my chest. Just get through this, Brenda. It is just a needle. It is just plasma. It is $40. That is enough for peanut butter, bread, and maybe, just maybe, a portion of Kelly's asthma medication if I can find a generic coupon. Brenda Bennett? The voice was sharp. I stood up too quickly, feeling a wave of dizziness. I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. I followed the nurse, a woman named Loretta whose name tag hung crookedly on her scrubs, back to the screening area. She looked tired. We were all tired here. Arm, she said, not looking at me. I rolled up my sleeve. Loretta went through the motions with practiced indifference. She swabbed my skin, the alcohol feeling cold against my feverish shame. She inserted the needle. I looked away, staring at a water stain on the drop ceiling. Then, the silence stretched too long. Usually, this is where they hook you up to the machine, tell you to squeeze a stress ball, and ignore you for 45 minutes. But Loretta wasn't moving. I turned my head back. She was staring at the small sample vial she had just drawn. Her face had drained of color. She looked at the vial, then at me, then back at the vial. Her hands were shaking. Is something wrong? I asked, panic spiking in my chest. Do I have an infection? Is my iron too low? Don't move, she whispered. Her voice was trembling. Do not move, Mrs. Bennett. I need the director. Right now. She practically ran out of the cubicle. My heart hammered against my ribs. Oh God, I thought. I'm sick. That's why I've been so dizzy. It's not just the hunger. I have something terrible, and I have no health insurance, no husband, no money. I'm going to die in a free clinic and leave Kelly all alone. Minutes passed like hours. I considered ripping the needle out and running, but fear kept me frozen. Suddenly, the door burst open. It wasn't just Loretta. It was the center's medical director, Dr. Evans, looking frantic. And behind him was a man who looked like he had taken a wrong turn on his way to a board meeting at the Willis Tower. He was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my former mortgage. He was out of breath, his hair windblown, his eyes scanning the room until they locked on me with an intensity that made me shrink back. Is this her? The suit man demanded. The initial rapid test confirms it, Dr. Evans said, wiping sweat from his forehead. RH null. Unmistakable. The man in the suit stepped into the tiny cubicle, filling the space with the scent of expensive cologne and power. He looked at me not like a person, but like I was the Holy Grail. Mrs. Bennett, he said, his voice breathless. My name is Arthur Pendleton. I represent the Vance family office. Please, do not panic, but I need you to listen to me very carefully. I don't understand, I stammered. Am I sick? No, Arthur said, crouching down so he was eye level with me. You are not sick, Brenda. You are a miracle. You have Rh-null blood. It is often called golden blood. There are less than 50 people on this planet confirmed to have it. And right now, my employer, Mr. Sterling Vance, is in a private hospital in Zurich. He is dying. His body is rejecting every transfusion. He needs your blood type specifically. Without it, he will not survive the week. I stared at him. Sterling Vance. The name was vaguely familiar. Banking? Real estate? It didn't matter. It sounded like a scam. I just came for $40, I whispered. Arthur reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a checkbook and a pen. Mrs. Bennett, there is a Gulfstream jet waiting at O'Hare right now. If you agree to come with me to Switzerland immediately to provide transfusions for Mr. Vance, we will compensate you. He wrote something on the check, tore it off, and held it out with a trembling hand. This is just the advance, he said. I looked at the piece of paper. The numbers swam before my eyes. $3 million. The room spun. The dirty linoleum floor seemed to tilt. $3 million. 10 minutes ago, I was worried about the price of peanut butter. Now, this stranger was offering me a lifeline that could pull me out of the abyss. Is this real? I asked, my voice cracking. It is life and death, Arthur said solemnly. Will you help us? I looked at the check, then at my worn-out shoes. I thought of my daughter Kelly, coughing in that damp apartment. I thought of my husband, Dennis, and the younger woman he left me for. I thought of the bankruptcy lawyers. I need to make a call, I said, clutching the check like it was a lifeline in a storm. Thank you so much for listening so far. I am shaking just remembering that moment. Before I tell you what happened next, and how my husband reacted when he found out, please tell me in the comments, what city are you listening from today? I love seeing how far my story travels. Now, let me take you back to how I ended up in that chair in the first place. To understand why a $3 million check felt like a hallucination, you have to understand where I was just 6 months ago. I wasn't sitting in dirty clinics. I was standing in the center of the grand ballroom at the Palmer House Hilton, directing a team of 50 people for the biggest charity gala of the season. I was the owner of Elite Events. I had built that company from my kitchen table while raising a toddler. For 25 years, I poured my soul into it. And for 25 years, Dennis was right there beside me. Or so I thought. Dennis was my husband, my CFO, the man who managed the books while I managed the dreams. We were a team. We had the penthouse, the cars, the vacations in Tuscany. But the fall didn't happen in slow motion. It happened all at once, in a single, catastrophic night. It was the Tech Summit Gala. 500 guests. The menu was supposed to be exquisite seafood. But halfway through the speeches, people started getting sick. Violently sick. Ambulances were lined up outside the hotel. It was a nightmare. The investigation later showed that the industrial freezers in our prep kitchen had been turned off for hours, then turned back on. The temperature logs had been tampered with. The lawsuits came like a tidal wave. Elite Events was liable. My insurance policy, which Dennis assured me was comprehensive, somehow had a lapse in coverage due to a missed payment. A missed payment I knew nothing about. I remember the day the final gavel fell. I came home to the penthouse, shell-shocked, ready to collapse into Dennis's arms and figure out how we would rebuild. We still had our personal savings. We still had each other. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Dennis? I called out, dropping my keys on the marble console table. I walked into the bedroom. The closet doors were open. His side was empty. Not just messy, empty. The suits were gone. The shoes were gone. Even the watch winder on the dresser was gone. There was a suitcase on the bed, the last one. Dennis was zipping it up. He didn't jump when I entered. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed, like I was a traffic jam making him late for dinner. "What is going on?" I asked, my brain refusing to process the visual information. "Where are you going?" He pulled the suitcase off the bed, the wheels thudding against the hardwood floor. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold. Dead. "I'm leaving, Brenda," he said. His voice was casual, matter-of-fact. "I spoke to my lawyer this morning. The divorce papers will be served to you tomorrow at the office. Or what's left of it." "Divorce?" I choked out. "Dennis, we are in trouble, yes, but we can fix this. We have the savings. We can downsize." He let out a short, cruel laugh. "We don't have the savings, Brenda." "I do. I moved the liquid assets to an offshore trust months ago. You were too busy picking out flower arrangements to notice." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about survival," he sneered. I saw the sinking ship coming a mile away. "You're 53 years old, Brenda. You're bankrupt. You're ruined. Did you really think I was going to stick around and clip coupons with you? I have a life to live." "Who is she?" The question flew out of my mouth before I could stop it. Call it a woman's intuition. A man like Dennis doesn't leave a sinking ship unless he has another boat waiting. He smirked. "Amber. She appreciates me. She doesn't treat me like an employee in her company. Amber. My executive assistant. The 28-year-old girl I had hired. The girl I had mentored. The girl I had bought a designer handbag for her birthday last month." "Get out," I whispered. "I'm going," he said, walking past me. "By the way, the mortgage on this place is 3 months behind. The bank will be foreclosing in about 2 weeks. Good luck, Brenda." He walked out the door. I heard the elevator ding. I heard the doors slide shut. And just like that, 25 years of marriage, my business, and my financial security were gone. I ran to the computer. I logged into our joint accounts. 0. 0. 0. He had left me with $12.40 in the checking account and a mountain of corporate debt that I had personally guaranteed. I sank onto the floor of that beautiful, empty bedroom and screamed. I didn't know then that the rock bottom I was feeling was actually just a ledge, and I was about to fall so much further. I didn't know that my own family would be the ones to push me off. The foreclosure happened exactly as Dennis predicted. The bank took the penthouse. The creditors took the cars. I sold my jewelry, the pieces Dennis hadn't stolen, just to pay for a moving truck and a storage unit for the few things I could keep. I had nowhere to go. My daughter, Kelly, was in her final year of architecture school in Boston. I couldn't burden her. I couldn't tell her that her father had destroyed us. Not yet. I wanted to protect her. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I called my older sister, Joyce. Joyce lived in a comfortable 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. We weren't incredibly close. Joyce had always made snide comments about my fancy city life and my workaholism, but she was family. Blood is thicker than water, right? That's what I told myself as I drove my rental car to her driveway, my life packed into 3 cardboard boxes in the trunk. "Well," Joyce said, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. "Look who finally has time for a visit." "It's not a visit, Joyce," I said, fighting back tears. "I told you on the phone. Dennis took everything. I have nowhere else to go." She sighed, a heavy, dramatic sound, and stepped aside. I suppose you can stay. But only for a few weeks. The guest room is being renovated, so you'll have to take the sofa. The sofa was lumpy and smelled of her 3 cats. But I was grateful. At least it was a roof. For the first few days, I was in a daze. I spent hours on the phone with lawyers who all told me the same thing: chasing Dennis's offshore money would cost thousands of dollars in retainers I didn't have. He had covered his tracks perfectly. He had been planning this for years. Joyce wasn't comforting. In fact, she seemed to derive a sick sort of pleasure from my downfall. She would hum while she cooked dinner, asking me pointed questions. So, he left you for the secretary? She asked one evening over meatloaf. Classic. I always told you, Brenda, a man needs attention. You were always so busy with your little parties. You probably made him feel neglected. He stole millions of dollars, Joyce, I snapped, pushing my food around the plate. He committed fraud. This isn't about him feeling neglected. He's a criminal. Joyce rolled her eyes. Dennis is a smart man. He secured his future. Maybe if you had been a better wife, he would have secured yours too. I stared at her. Are you defending him? I'm just saying, she took a sip of her wine. It takes 2 to tango. And frankly, you've always been a bit arrogant. Thinking you were better than everyone because you owned a company. Maybe this is God's way of humbling you. My stomach turned. I realized then that Joyce had been holding on to decades of jealousy. She hated my success. She hated that I had left our small hometown. She was enjoying seeing me broken. The breaking point came a week later. I came back from a humiliating job interview, a receptionist position that I didn't get because I was overqualified, to hear Joyce on the phone in the kitchen. Oh, I know, Dennis. It's terrible, she was saying. Her voice was warm, sympathetic. She's just lying around the house. It's very depressing. I completely understand why you had to leave. It must have been exhausting living with that ego. I froze in the hallway. She was talking to him. She was talking to the man who had ruined my life, and she was bonding with him. I walked into the kitchen. Joyce jumped, nearly dropping the phone. You're talking to him? I asked, my voice trembling with rage. He called to check on you. Joyce said defensively, not hanging up. He's worried, Brenda. He's family. He is not family. He is a thief. I grabbed my purse. Hang up the phone, Joyce. I will not, she sneered. It's my house, my phone. Dennis is offering to send me some money to help cover the cost of your food. Which is more than you've contributed. That was it. The betrayal cut deeper than Dennis's because this was my sister. This was the person who was supposed to have my back when the world fell apart. Instead, she was selling me out for a few $100s of hush money from my ex-husband. Keep the money, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. You deserve each other. I packed my 3 boxes that night. It was pouring rain. I had no plan, no destination. I just knew I couldn't spend one more second under the same roof as a woman who smiled at my destruction. I drove away, shivering, crying until I couldn't breathe. I was truly alone. Leaving Joyce's house was a moment of pride, but pride doesn't pay the rent. I drove around for hours, sleeping in the car that first night. By morning, reality set in. I needed a place to live, and I needed it cheap. I found a studio apartment in a neighborhood I used to warn my employees to avoid. The landlord didn't ask for a credit check, just cash up front. The building smelled of boiled cabbage and mildew. When I turned on the lights, roaches scattered into the cracks of the walls. It was a hellhole. But it was my hellhole. I couldn't hide the truth from Kelly anymore. Her tuition payment was due, and the check had bounced. She called me in a panic. I had to tell her everything. Not the gritty details of the roaches, but the bankruptcy, the divorce, the fact that the money was gone. I expected her to scream. I expected her to blame me. Instead, my beautiful, brilliant daughter did something that broke my heart even more. She dropped out. "I'm coming home, Mom," she said. "I'm not staying in Boston while you're going through this. I can work. We'll figure it out together." 2 days later, Kelly moved into the Roach Motel with me. She got a job waitressing at a diner double shifts. I was cleaning houses, me, the woman who used to organize galas for senators, now scrubbing toilets for minimum wage. We pooled our money just to buy rice, beans, and pay the rent. It was humiliating, but we were surviving. Until the winter set in. The apartment had no proper heating. The dampness seeped into the walls, into our clothes, into our lungs. Kelly had suffered from asthma as a child, but it had been managed for years. But the mold in that apartment triggered it with a vengeance. I woke up one night to a terrible sound. A wheezing, gasping rattle coming from Kelly's mattress on the floor. "Kelly?" I sat up, rushing to her side. She was clutching her chest, her lips turning a tint of blue. "Inhaler," she gasped. "Empty." I shook her rescue inhaler. It was light as a feather. "Empty." Okay, breathe with me," I panicked. "I'll go to the 24-hour pharmacy." I grabbed my wallet and dumped it onto the table. I counted every bill, every quarter, every penny. $22.47. I knew the price of her inhaler. Without insurance, which we had lost months ago, it was $60. I ran to the pharmacy anyway, praying for a miracle. I begged the pharmacist. I showed him my ID. I promised to pay him the rest next week. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, looking at me with pity but firmness. "I can't give away medication. It's against corporate policy. Try the emergency room." "The ER?" That would be a $1,000 bill we couldn't pay. I went back to the apartment, defeated. I boiled water, making Kelly breathe the steam. I rubbed her back all night, listening to her struggle for every breath. I felt like a failure. A complete, utter failure. I had brought this child into the world, given her a life of privilege, and now I couldn't even provide her with air. By morning, the attack had subsided, but Kelly was weak. She looked pale and exhausted. "I'm okay, Mom," she whispered, trying to smile. "Don't worry." Don't worry? I was consumed by worry. I needed money. Fast. I needed $60 by the end of the day to buy that inhaler, or the next attack might kill her. I looked at my phone. I had no one to call. Joyce? Never. Dennis? He had blocked my number. Then, I saw a flyer on the sidewalk as I walked to the bus stop. Plasma Donation Center. New donors earn up to $40 today. $40. Plus the 22 I had. That would be $62. Enough for the inhaler and a candy bar for Kelly. I didn't hesitate. I turned around and walked toward the center. I walked with my head down, shame burning my cheeks, but my resolve iron hard. I would sell my blood. I would sell a kidney if I had to. I would do anything to hear my daughter breathe freely again. And that brings us back to the moment the man in the suit rushed in. That moment wasn't just about money. It was about air. It was about life. "I need to make a call," I had told Arthur Pendleton in the clinic. My hands shook as I dialed Kelly. I had to be careful. If I told her I was getting on a private jet with a strange man to fly to Europe because of my blood, she would think I was having a mental breakdown or being trafficked. She was smart, protective, and terrified of losing me. "Kelly?" I said when she answered. The background noise of the diner clattered behind her. "Mom? Is everything okay? Did you get that money?" She didn't want to say medicine. I did, I lied. The check in my hand felt heavy, like a gold bar. "Listen, honey. Something came up. A job opportunity. An old client from Elite Events, they tracked me down. They need me for an emergency event consultation in New York." "New York? Now?" "Yes. It's urgent. They're flying me out immediately. It pays well, Kelly. Really well. Enough to fix everything." "Mom, that sounds sketchy," she said, her voice sharp with suspicion. "Who is the client?" "The Vance Group," I said, reading the name off the check Arthur held. "You can look them up. They're legitimate." "I have to go, honey. I transferred some money to your account for the medicine. Go get it now. I love you." I hung up before she could ask more questions. I turned to Arthur. "Let's go." Arthur's car was a black sedan with tinted windows. He drove us to a private airfield, not the main chaos of O'Hare. As we pulled up to the tarmac, I saw it. The Gulf Stream. Sleek, silver, looking like a bird of prey waiting to launch. But as I stepped out of the car, the cold wind hitting my face, my business instincts, dormant for 6 months under layers of trauma, suddenly woke up. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. "Mrs. Bennett?" Arthur said, pausing on the steps. "We really must hurry." "Not yet," I said. My voice was stronger than it had been in the clinic. "You handed me a check for an advance. But I haven't seen a contract." Arthur blinked, surprised. "We can handle the paperwork in Zurich. Mr. Vance is a man of his word." "I'm sure he is," I said, crossing my arms over my thin coat. "But I was a businesswoman for 25 years, Arthur. I don't get on planes without ink on paper. And I have conditions." Arthur looked at his watch, agonized, then looked at me. He saw I wasn't moving. He pulled a leather portfolio from his briefcase. "I have a standard donor agreement here." I took it and leaned against the hood of the car, reading rapidly. It was standard legalese. Liability waivers. Non-disclosure agreements. Payment terms. "This isn't enough," I said, looking up. "Mrs. Bennett, $3 million is." "I don't care about the $3 million right now," I interrupted. "I have a daughter. She's 22. She's asthmatic. She has no health insurance. If something happens to me on this table, if my body reacts poorly, if the plane goes down, she is left with nothing." I took a pen from his pocket. I scratched out a section and wrote in the margins. "I want a life insurance policy of $5 million, beneficiary Kelly Bennett. I want full medical coverage for her, for life, paid by the Vance estate. And I want an education trust established for her immediately. Irrevocable." Arthur stared at me. "Mrs. Bennett, I can't authorize that without." "Then call him," I said. "Call Mr. Vance. Or whoever holds the purse strings. Because my blood is the only thing that can save him, right? That makes me the supply, and he is the demand. That's Economics 101. Arthur hesitated, then pulled out a satellite phone. He spoke rapidly in German, then paused, listening. He looked at me with new respect. "He agrees," Arthur said, handing me the phone. "He wants to speak to you." I put the phone to my ear. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was weak, raspy, barely a whisper, but it had an edge of steel. "Mrs. Bennett. You drive a hard bargain for someone wearing, what did Arthur say? Thrift store shoes? My shoes don't determine my worth, Mr. Vance, I said, my chin lifting. My blood does. And right now, my blood is the most expensive liquid on earth to you. A dry, wheezing chuckle came through the line. Touché. Arthur will sign the addendum. Get on the plane, Brenda. I look forward to meeting the woman who holds my life in her veins. I handed the phone back. Arthur signed the changes. I took a picture of the document and emailed it to a secure cloud account I hadn't used in months. Then, and only then, did I climb the stairs. As I stepped into the plush, cream-colored cabin of the jet, leaving the gray Chicago sky behind, I realized something. I wasn't just a desperate woman selling plasma anymore. I was a negotiator. I was a player. The game had changed, and for the first time in 6 months, I held the winning hand. The flight was a blur of luxury I had almost forgotten existed. A flight attendant served me steak and vintage wine, but my stomach was so knotted with adrenaline I could barely eat. I spent the hours staring out the window, watching the Atlantic Ocean pass beneath me, wondering if I was flying toward salvation or a different kind of trap. We landed in Zurich just as the sun was rising over the Alps. The mountains were jagged teeth of white and gray against a bruised purple sky. A helicopter transferred us from the airport to a private medical facility nestled high in the peaks. They called it a clinic, but as we approached, it looked more like a modern fortress of glass and stone, cantilevered over a freezing lake. Clinique des Alpes, Arthur announced as we touched down on the helipad. Mr. Vance bought the entire facility last month so he could receive treatment in privacy. Inside, it was silent. Not the eerie silence of my empty apartment, but the expensive, heavy silence of money. Nurses moved like ghosts in white uniforms. The air was filtered and smelled of pine and ozone. I was whisked through a series of tests. Blood pressure, heart rate, more samples. They treated me like a fragile piece of porcelain. Finally, Arthur led me to the penthouse suite. He's waiting. The room was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the snow-capped mountains. In the center, surrounded by beeping monitors and 4 stands, lay a man in a hospital bed. Sterling Vance looked nothing like the photos I had Googled on the plane. In the press, he was a lion, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, intimidating. The man in the bed was a skeleton wrapped in skin. His face was gray, his cheeks sunken. But his eyes were alive. They were a piercing, icy blue, burning with a fierce intelligence that the sickness hadn't touched. He watched me walk in. I stood by the bedside, feeling suddenly awkward in my travel-wrinkled clothes. "So," he rasped, his voice sounding like dry leaves. "The golden goose arrives." "Mrs. Bennet," I corrected him gently. "Or Brenda." He managed a weak smirk. "Brenda. You extorted a $5 million insurance policy from my assistant on the tarmac." "I like that. It shows character." "It shows a mother's desperation," I said, sitting in the chair a nurse offered. "I needed to make sure my daughter has a future." "A future," Sterling repeated, staring at the ceiling. "That is a luxury, isn't it?" "I have billions of dollars, Brenda. I own buildings in Tokyo, mines in Africa, shipping fleets in the Pacific. And yet, for the last week, I couldn't buy a single drop of the one thing I needed." He turned his head slowly to look at me. "Do you know what Rh null means?" Arthur said it's rare. "It's evolutionarily impossible," Sterling said. "It lacks all 61 antigens in the Rh system. It is the purest blood in the world. Universal donor for the rare cases. But if I need blood, I can only receive Rh null. There are less than 50 of us. We are a secret club of ghosts. I tracked down 3 others before you. 1 was in Brazil, too sick to travel. 1 in Japan refused. 1 disappeared." He looked at my arm. "You are my biological twin, in a way. The only person on this continent who can save me. Why didn't I know? I asked. I've had blood tests before. Standard tests don't look for it, he explained. They just see O negative and move on. It takes a specific screen, or a very sharp nurse, to notice the anomaly. You were hiding in plain sight. He reached out a hand. It was cold and frail. I took it, surprised by the contact. You have suffered recently, he said. It wasn't a question. He was looking at the fray on my sleeve, the lines of stress around my mouth. I lost everything, I admitted, my voice dropping. My business. My home. My husband left me. Betrayal, Sterling nodded, his eyes darkening. I know the taste of it. It's bitterer than death. But you are here now. And in this room, you are not a bankruptcy victim. You are the most powerful person in the world. You hold the key to the kingdom. The door opened, and a team of doctors entered, pushing a cart with transfusion equipment. The moment of connection broke, but the feeling remained. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt valuable. Are you ready, Mrs. Bennett? The lead doctor asked. I looked at Sterling. He looked back, fear flickering behind his blue eyes. He was a billionaire, but he was terrified of dying. I'm ready, I said. Let's get you that future you wanted. The procedure was simpler than I expected. They hooked me up to a machine that separated my plasma and red blood cells, returning what they didn't need. I watched the dark red liquid flow through the clear tubing, traveling from my arm to a collection bag, and eventually, into Sterling vents. It was strange to think that the essence of my life was flowing into this stranger. As the bag filled, I saw color return to his cheeks, faintly at first, then more noticeably. His breathing deepened. The frantic beeping of the monitors slowed to a steady, rhythmic pulse. It was like watering a withered plant and watching it bloom in fast forward. After the donation, they insisted I rest in a suite adjacent to Sterling's. It was nicer than any hotel I had ever stayed in. The bed sheets were Egyptian cotton. The bathroom had a soaking tub the size of a small pool. A chef came in to ask for my dietary preferences. Anything with iron, I joked weakly. Steak. Spinach. Chocolate. He bowed and returned 30 minutes later with a filet mignon that melted in my mouth. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, remembering the peanut butter sandwiches of the last few weeks. That evening, Arthur knocked on my door. He was holding a velvet box. From Mr. Vance, he said. He is awake. He is sitting up. He wanted you to have this. I opened the box. Inside lay a necklace, a single, teardrop-shaped ruby surrounded by diamonds, suspended on a platinum chain. It looked like a drop of blood frozen in fire. It's too much, I whispered. It is a token, Arthur said. He calls it the blood drop. He commissioned it years ago for his wife, but she passed before he could give it to her. He says it belongs to you now. I touched the cold stone. It was beautiful, but it felt heavy. I clasped it around my neck, looking in the mirror. The woman staring back looked different. Her hair was clean, her stomach was full, and diamonds glittered at her throat. But her eyes were still haunted. I sat on the edge of the bed and turned on my phone, which I had kept off during the procedure. It buzzed immediately. A flood of notifications. 7 missed calls from Kelly. 3 texts. Mom, where are you? Mom, please answer. Dad is here. My blood ran cold. I tapped the last message. It had been sent 2 hours ago. He came to Aunt Joyce's house first, looking for you. Now he's calling me. He knows you're not in New York. Joyce told him about the weird phone call she overheard you make to a travel agent before you left, which I didn't make, so she's lying. He thinks you have money hidden away. He's furious. My phone rang in my hand. It wasn't Kelly. It was a number I had deleted but knew by heart. Dennis. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against the diamond necklace. He shouldn't be calling. He had blocked me. He had left me. He had erased me. Why was he calling now? I shouldn't answer. I knew I shouldn't. But the fear was a reflex. The habit of 25 years of answering when he called. And a small, dark part of me wanted to know what he wanted. I slid the bar to answer. Hello? Brenda. His voice was smooth, oily, with that fake concern that used to fool me. Thank God you answered. I've been so worried. Worried? I let out a harsh laugh. You blocked my number, Dennis. You left me with $12. I was angry, he said quickly. We were both emotional. But I've been doing some thinking. We rushed things. 25 years shouldn't end like that. What do you want, Dennis? I heard rumors, he said, his tone shifting, becoming sharper. Joyce says you're traveling. Private jets. Europe. That's expensive for a woman who claimed bankruptcy, Brenda. Did you hide assets from the court? Because that's a felony. If the judge finds out you were stashing cash while I was trying to save our finances. You stole the money. I shouted, shaking. You emptied the accounts. Prove it, he said calmly. The accounts were joint. I withdrew my share. But if you have sudden wealth, that's suspicious. We're still legally married, Brenda. Anything you earn, anything you have, it's community property until the divorce is final. So, tell me, where is the money coming from? Or do I need to call the police and report my wife for fraud? I couldn't breathe. The walls of the luxury suite felt like they were closing in. He was going to take this too. He was going to take the insurance, the trust for Kelly, the lifeline I had just caught. He was a vulture, circling, smelling fresh meat. I don't have any money, I stammered into the phone, hating how weak I sounded. Hating that even thousands of miles away, Dennis could reduce me to a trembling mess. I'm working. It's a job. A job? Dennis laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. What kind of job pays for private jets for a washed-up event planner? Are you sleeping with someone, Brenda? Is that it? You found a sugar daddy? You're disgusting, I spat. I'm practical. And I'm your husband. Listen to me carefully. I want half. Whatever you've stumbled into, whatever scam you're running, I want 50%. Or I will go to the judge tomorrow and freeze every asset you have. I'll freeze Kelly's accounts too. I know you sent her money. Don't you dare touch Kelly, I hissed. Then be reasonable. Come home. Let's discuss this like adults. Bring the checkbook. I was hyperventilating. I didn't hear the door to my suite open. I didn't see the wheelchair rolling in until it was right beside me. Sterling Vance was sitting there. He looked weak, wrapped in a cashmere robe, and four-pole trailing behind him like a metallic tail, but his face was thunderous. He had heard. He held out his hand. Give me the phone, he said. His voice was raspy but commanded absolute obedience. It's my husband, I whispered, clutching the device. He says he'll freeze everything. Brenda, Sterling said, his blue eyes locking onto mine. Give me the phone. I handed it to him. Sterling put the phone to his ear. He didn't say anything for a long moment. He just listened to Dennis's ranting on the other end. Then, Sterling spoke. Mr. Bennett? I could hear Dennis pause on the other end. Who is this? This is Sterling Vance, he said. The name dropped into the silence like an anvil. You may have heard of me. If not, Google me quickly. I'll wait. Silence. Then, a stammer. Vance? The billionaire? The same, Sterling said calmly. I am currently receiving medical care from your wife. She is under my protection. And I have a very low tolerance for pests. Now listen here, Dennis tried to bluster, though his voice wavered. She's my wife. We have financial issues to settle. This is a domestic matter. It is no longer a domestic matter, Sterling cut him off. It is a Vance family matter. And let me be clear, Mr. Bennett. If you contact Brenda again, if you threaten her daughter, or if you attempt to touch a single penny of the compensation I have provided her, I will unleash a team of lawyers that will make your current legal representation look like kindergartners. You can't threaten me, Dennis shouted. I have rights. I have more money than God, Sterling replied, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly low register. I can buy your debt. I can buy the building you live in and evict you. I can bury you in so much litigation that you will be spending your next 10 birthdays in a deposition room. Do not test me. You walked away from this woman. Keep walking. Sterling tapped the screen and ended the call. He handed the phone back to me. I stared at him, stunned. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Sterling said, adjusting his robe. Stress is bad for the blood, Brenda. And besides, a small, mischievous smile touched his lips. I haven't had a good fight in months. It made me feel alive. He won't stop, I said, shaking my head. You don't know Dennis. He's greedy. He'll find another way. Then we will be ready, Sterling said. Arthur is already looking into your husband's finances. If he wants a war, we will give him a war. But for now, you need to rest. Tomorrow, we have another session. And I need my golden blood to be strong. He wheeled himself back toward the door, then stopped. By the way, that necklace looks better on you than it ever would have on my wife. She had a cold heart. Yours is resilient. He left the room. I sat there in the silence, clutching the phone. The fear was still there, lurking in the corners, but something else was growing beside it. A feeling of safety. For the first time in 6 months, I wasn't fighting the world alone. I had a dragon on my side. But dragons have their own enemies. And I didn't know yet that my presence here was about to wake up another one, Sterling's own son, Preston, who was currently on a flight from Singapore, and he wasn't coming to thank me. He was coming to protect his inheritance. The door to Sterling's suite flew open with enough force to rattle the medical monitors. I was sitting by the window, reading a book while Sterling napped, but the intrusion made me jump. A man strode in. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a navy suit that was tailored within an inch of its life, and he had Sterling's jawline. But where Sterling's face held a kind of weary wisdom, this man's face was sharp, hungry, and currently twisted in suspicion. This was Preston Vance. The son. He didn't look at his sleeping father. He looked straight at me. So, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. This is the $3 million woman. I closed my book slowly. You must be Preston. I'm Brenda. I know who you are, he snapped, walking over to the bed and picking up his father's chart, flipping through it aggressively. I've seen the background check. Brenda Bennett. Bankrupt event planner. Foreclosed home. Outstanding debts totaling 6 figures. And suddenly, you're here in the Swiss Alps, wearing. He glanced at my neck, my mother's necklace. His eyes narrowed. That ruby has been in the family vault for 20 years. How did you get it? Did you ask for it? Or did you just cry a little about your sad life until the old man felt sorry for you? I stood up. My knees were shaking, but I forced my spine to be steel. Your father gave it to me, Preston. I didn't ask for anything except fair compensation for saving his life. Saving his life? Preston laughed. It was a cold, corporate sound. You're selling a commodity, Mrs. Bennet. It's a transaction. You have a rare blood type, we have money. That's it. Don't delude yourself into thinking you're part of the family. You're a vendor. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. He smelled of expensive scotch and jet fuel. My father is vulnerable right now. He's scared of dying. And men like him, when they get scared, they get generous. They make bad decisions. Like promising millions to a desperate woman who just happened to walk into a clinic. I didn't just walk in, I said, keeping my voice level. Your people found me. And frankly, Preston, your father is lonely. He talks to me because I listen. Maybe if you were here more often instead of in Singapore managing the empire, he wouldn't need to bond with a stranger. Preston's face flushed red. I had struck a nerve. I run this company, he hissed. I keep the stock price up so he can afford this castle in the sky. I protect this family's assets. And right now, you look like a liability. I've seen the contract addendum. 5 million in insurance? An education trust? You're bleeding him dry. I'm ensuring my daughter doesn't end up destitute if I die on that table tomorrow, I shot back. I'm a mother. You wouldn't understand. I understand gold diggers, he sneered. And I know your type. Failed business, husband left you, desperate for a payout. Well, enjoy the view while it lasts, Brenda. Once the surgery is done and my father is recovered, you'll be on the first economy flight back to Chicago. And if you try to take advantage of him while he's under anesthesia, I will have my lawyers bury you so deep you'll need a map to find sunlight. Preston, a weak voice rasped from the bed. We both turned. Sterling was awake. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp. Father, Preston's demeanor changed instantly. He put on a mask of concern. I didn't mean to wake you. I just arrived. I was assessing the situation. You are insulting my guest, Sterling whispered. Apologize. Father, look at the expenses, Preston argued, waving the chart. She's manipulating you. She is giving me her blood, Preston, Sterling said, coughing slightly. Which is more than you have given me in 6 months. You send quarterly reports. She sends me plasma. Now, apologize to Mrs. Bennet, or you can watch the surgery from the parking lot. Preston's jaw clenched. He looked at me with pure venom, but he bowed his head slightly. I apologize for my tone, Mrs. Bennet. I am simply protective of my father. Accepted, I said coolly. Preston turned back to his father, ignoring me completely. We need to review the trust fund adjustments before the surgery tomorrow. Just in case. Get out, Sterling said softly. Excuse me? Get out, Preston. Go to your hotel. I'm tired. I want to talk to Brenda. Preston looked like he had been slapped. He glared at me one last time, a look that promised this wasn't over, and stormed out of the room. When the door clicked shut, Sterling sighed, sinking deeper into his pillows. I'm sorry, Brenda. He wasn't always like that. The business, it eats people's souls if they let it. He loves you, I said gently, sitting back down. He's just terrified of losing you. And he expresses fear as anger. My husband was the same way, or so I thought. Some men think protecting money is the same as protecting people. Preston sees everyone as a line item on a spreadsheet, Sterling murmured. asset or liability. He doesn't understand that some things, like loyalty, like sacrifice, don't have a price tag. He reached out and took my hand. Tomorrow is the big day. Are you scared? Terrified, I admitted. Me too, the billionaire whispered. Me too. The morning of the surgery, the clinic was buzzing with attention you could taste. It was a symphony of beeping machines, hurrying footsteps, and hushed German voices. I had given my final pre-surgical donation 2 days prior. Now, my job was just to wait. To wait and see if the golden liquid I had provided would actually work, or if Sterling's body would reject it like everything else. They wheeled Sterling down at 6 a.m. He looked small on the gurney, stripped of his suits and his power. Before they pushed him through the double doors, he looked at me. He didn't look at Preston, who was tapping furiously on his BlackBerry. He looked at me. "See you on the other side, Brenda," he whispered. "I'll be here, I promised." Then the doors swung shut, and the red light above the operating room turned on. The waiting room was luxurious, leather armchairs, an espresso machine, a view of the Alps, but it felt like a cage. It was just me and Preston. For the first hour, we ignored each other. Preston was on a conference call, pacing back and forth, barking orders about stock options and mergers. He was using work as a shield, a way to pretend he wasn't terrified that his father was being cut open in the next room. By hour 3, he ran out of people to call. He sat down opposite me, staring at the floor. The silence was suffocating. "He talks about you," Preston said suddenly. He didn't look up. "What?" I asked, surprised he was speaking to me without a lawyer present. "My father. When I talk to the doctors, they say he's been different this week. Happier. He told Dr. Weber that you make him laugh." Preston looked at me then, and the corporate mask slipped. He looked like a scared little boy. "He hasn't laughed in years. Not since Mom died." "He has a good sense of humor," I said softly. Underneath the grumpiness. "I don't know him like that anymore," Preston admitted, his voice cracking. "We just talk about business. It's the only language we speak. If he dies on that table, the last thing we talked about was the Q3 earnings report." He put his head in his hands. "God, I'm a terrible son." I watched him, and my heart softened. I saw my own daughter, Kelly, in his fear. I saw the universal pain of a child realizing their parent is mortal. "You're not terrible, Preston," I said. "You're just doing what you were taught. He knows you love him. He told me last night. He said you're the best businessman he knows, and he's proud of you. He just wishes you'd stop looking at the inheritance and look at him." Preston looked up, tears in his eyes. "He said that?" "He did." We sat in silence for a while, but it was a companionable silence now. The hostility had evaporated, replaced by shared anxiety. "Tell me," Preston said after a while, wiping his eyes. "Why did your husband leave? If you don't mind me asking." The background check said irreconcilable differences, but that's just lawyer talk. "He left me for his secretary," I said, staring at the mountains. "But really, he left me for money. We had a crisis. Instead of fighting it with me, he stole what was left and ran. He chose the easy way out." Preston nodded slowly. "Cowardice. My father hates cowards." "Yes," I said. "He does." Just then, the double doors swung open. Dr. Weber walked out. He was still wearing his surgical scrubs, his mask pulled down around his neck. He looked exhausted. We both shot up. "Doctor?" Preston asked, his voice trembling. Dr. Weber smiled. It was a tired, beautiful smile. "He made it," the doctor said. "The transplant was successful. His body accepted the blood transfusions perfectly. No rejection. His vitals are strong. Preston let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. He hugged Dr. Weber, then, to my shock, he turned and hugged me. It was brief and awkward, but it was real. Thank you, he whispered into my ear. Thank you for giving him back to me. Go see him, Dr. Weber said. He's in recovery. Preston ran toward the doors. I stayed back, letting them have their moment. I walked to the window and pressed my hand against the cold glass. Tears streamed down my face. Not of sadness, but of relief. He was alive. And because he was alive, I was alive. My contract was fulfilled. The money was secure. Kelly was safe. But as I looked at the snow-covered peaks, I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt a strange pull. I realized I wasn't just relieved for the money. I was relieved because my friend was okay. And then, just as I was about to turn away, my phone buzzed. It was an email notification. Not from Kelly. Not from Dennis. It was from a private investigator I had hired with the very first advance payment Arthur gave me. I had asked him to look into the accident at my catering company. The power outage that ruined the food. Subject: Elite Events Investigation Urgent. I opened the email. I read the first paragraph. And the relief in my chest turned into a ball of ice-cold fury. Sterling's recovery was going smoothly for the first 2 days. I spent my time in the guest suite, preparing for my return to Chicago. But on the third night, chaos erupted. Alarms blared down the hallway. Nurses ran past my door. My heart stopped. I threw on a robe and ran towards Sterling's room. Preston was already there, standing outside the glass wall of the ICU, looking pale. What happened? I grabbed his arm. Pericardial effusion, Preston said, his voice shaking. Fluid around the heart. His blood pressure crashed. They're draining it now. We watched through the glass as the team worked on Sterling. It was terrifying. The man who had just started to look human again was now pale as a sheet, wires everywhere. It took 2 hours. 2 hours of hell. Finally, Dr. Weber came out. He's stable, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. It was a complication, but we caught it. The blood you gave him, Mrs. Bennett, it's clotting perfectly. It saved him again. If he had normal blood, he would have bled out during the drainage. I slumped against the wall. He was safe. They let us in to see him an hour later. Sterling was awake, groggy but coherent. When he saw me, he managed a weak smile. You're still here, he whispered. I'm not going anywhere, I said, taking his hand. Good, he said. His eyes shifted to Preston, then back to me. Because I have something to show you. Preston, hand me the file. Preston hesitated. Father, not now. You need to rest. Now, Sterling commanded. Even half dead, he was the boss. Preston reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder. He handed it to me. What is this? I asked. While you were saving my life, Sterling whispered, I had Arthur and my private security team look into yours. I wanted to know who I was dealing with. And I wanted to know why a smart woman like you went bankrupt overnight. I opened the folder. It wasn't just financial records. It was surveillance logs. Phone records. Emails. My eyes scanned the pages, and my breath caught in my throat. There was a report from the utility company regarding the night of the Tech Summit Gala, the night the freezers failed. The report stated that the main breaker for the kitchen hadn't tripped. It had been manually switched off. And there was security footage from the hotel's loading dock. Grainy, but clear enough. A man walking into the electrical room at 4 a.m. A man wearing a distinct trench coat. A trench coat I had bought for Dennis for our anniversary. I flipped the page. There were bank transfers. Dated 2 weeks before the gala. Dennis had transferred $500,000 from our corporate reserve to an account in the Cayman Islands under the name Amber Davis. He didn't just leave you, Brenda, Sterling said, his voice thick with emotion. He sabotaged you. He turned off the freezers. He poisoned the food intentionally to trigger the insurance clause in bankruptcy protection so he could wash his hands of the debt and leave with the cash he stole. It wasn't an accident. It was a setup. The room spun. I felt bile rise in my throat. I had thought Dennis was a coward. I thought he was a cheater. But this? This was a monster. He had risked the lives of 500 people. He had destroyed my reputation, my 25 years of hard work, just to cash out and run off with his mistress. He did it on purpose? I whispered, tears blurring my vision. He destroyed me on purpose? He wanted a clean break, Preston said, his voice surprisingly gentle. If the company went under, he could claim insolvency during the divorce. He could hide the assets he stole. It was evil, but calculated. I looked down at the photo of Dennis walking out of that electrical room. I remembered how he had looked at me that night. The fake shock. The fake comfort. Oh honey, what a disaster. Rage. It wasn't the hot, fiery rage I had felt before. This was different. This was cold. This was absolute. It started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips, freezing the tears on my face. I closed the folder. I'm going to kill him, I said. It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact. No, Sterling said. He squeezed my hand. You're not going to kill him. That's messy. You're going to destroy him. And I'm going to help you. How? I asked. Sterling looked at Preston. Show her the plan. Preston pulled out a second document. It was a business proposal. The cover read, Phoenix Crisis Management. You're an event planner, Sterling said. You know how to manage chaos. You know how to handle disasters because you just lived through the worst one imaginable. I want to invest in you. I want to partner with you to start a new firm. A firm that helps companies survive sabotage and crisis. But first, Sterling's eyes glittered with a dangerous light, we are going to use your first case study, the destruction of Dennis Bennett. We have the evidence, Preston added, a cruel smile playing on his lips. We have the bank trails. We have the footage. We can send him to prison for 20 years. But prison is too good for him right now, I finished, understanding their game. I want him to suffer first. I want him to think he's won. I want him to come for me, thinking I'm weak, and then. Then you drop the hammer, Sterling whispered. I looked at the two men. The billionaire and his shark of a son. And me, the woman with the golden blood. Arthur, I said, not turning around, knowing the assistant was in the corner. Book my flight home. I have a husband to bury. The last few days in Switzerland were a blur of strategy meetings. It wasn't about blood anymore, it was about war. Sterling, now sitting up and eating solid food, was the general. Preston was the tactician. And I was the weapon. We incorporated Phoenix Crisis Management in Delaware that afternoon. Sterling wired $10 million into the corporate account as seed funding. This isn't a gift, Brenda, Sterling told me, signing the papers with a steady hand. This is an investment. I expect a return. You're going to be the face of resilience. But first, you have to clean house. I will, I promised. I called Kelly. Pack your bags, honey. We're moving. Moving where? Back to Aunt Joyce's? She asked, sounding defeated. No, I said, looking out at the Swiss Alps one last time. We're going home. To the lake shore. When I landed in Chicago, Arthur had already arranged everything. He had sent a real estate team ahead of me. They hadn't bought my old penthouse back. Dennis and his lawyers had tied that up in the bankruptcy proceedings. Instead, Arthur bought the penthouse in the building directly across the street. It was higher up. Bigger. And it had a direct line of sight into the living room of my old apartment, where Dennis was currently living with Amber while the foreclosure dragged on. I walked into the new apartment. It was empty, echoing, and smelled of fresh paint and victory. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Chicago skyline perfectly. Do you like it? Arthur asked, standing by the door with the keys. It's perfect, I said. I walked to the window. I pulled a pair of high-powered binoculars out of my bag, a parting gift from Preston. I looked across the street. There he was. Dennis. He was sitting on my beige sofa, drinking wine. Amber walked in, wearing a robe that I recognized. It was mine. She was wearing my robe. My blood boiled, but I forced it down. Patience, I told myself. Let them get comfortable. Kelly arrived an hour later. When she walked in, she dropped her bags and gasped. Mom, how? Did you rob a bank? No, I said, hugging her tight. I saved a life. And now, I'm taking ours back. I sat Kelly down and told her everything. The blood. The sabotage. The plan. When I showed her the footage of Dennis turning off the freezers, my sweet, gentle daughter went silent. Her face hardened. She looked exactly like me in that moment. He made me believe we were poor because of bad luck, she whispered. He watched me struggle to breathe in that moldy apartment, knowing he had $500,000 hidden away? Yes, I said. Kelly looked at the window, at the building across the street. Burn him, Mom. Burn him to the ground. The next day, the rumors started. I made sure of it. I went shopping on the Magnificent Mile. I hired a driver to park a Bentley outside my old office building. I let myself be seen wearing the ruby necklace Sterling gave me. Chicago is a small town for the wealthy. The whispers spread like wildfire. Brenda Bennett is back. She looks rich. Where did she get the money? Who is backing her? I knew the news would reach Joyce first. And sure enough, 2 days after I moved in, the buzzer rang. Mrs. Bennett, the concierge said. Your sister is here. I smiled at Kelly. Showtime. Joyce walked into my new penthouse like she was walking on eggshells, but her eyes were darting everywhere, pricing the furniture, the art, the view. Brenda, she exclaimed, rushing to hug me. I let her, my body stiff. She smelled of envy and cheap perfume. Oh my God, look at this place. It's magnificent. Better than your old one. It is, isn't it? I said smoothly, pouring her a glass of champagne. Dom Perignon. Vintage. Joyce took the glass, her greedy fingers trembling slightly. So, the rumors are true. You landed on your feet. Dennis was saying you were probably destitute in Europe. Dennis says a lot of things, I said, sitting on the velvet armchair, looking like the queen I felt I was becoming. So, to what do I owe the pleasure? You kicked me out 3 weeks ago, remember? Oh, Brenda, don't be like that, Joyce waved a hand dismissively. I was stressed. The renovation, you know how it is. We're sisters. I was just worried about you. She leaned in, her eyes hungry. So, tell me. How? Did you win the lottery? Did you meet a man? I started a new business, I lied effortlessly. International consulting. Very high level. I have investors in Zurich. Investors, Joyce repeated, clearly calculating how she could get a slice. Well, that's wonderful. Does Dennis know? I'm sure you'll tell him the moment you leave, I smiled. No. I wouldn't. Joyce protested, feigning shock. Although, he has been asking about you. He feels terrible, you know. He misses you. Does he miss me, or does he miss the lifestyle I provided? He's unhappy with that girl, Joyce whispered conspiratorially. Amber. She's tacky. She spends all his money. He told me yesterday that he made a huge mistake. I swirled my champagne. Is that so? He wants to talk to you, Brenda. He wants to reconcile. I almost laughed out loud. Reconcile. He wanted to secure the bag. He realized his cash from the theft was running dry, and suddenly his bankrupt ex-wife was living in a penthouse. Tell him, I said, leaning forward, that I'm hosting a launch party for my new company next Saturday. At the Ritz. He can come. You can come too. Bring your husband. A party? Joyce's eyes lit up. Oh, Brenda, you're back on the social scene. I am, I said. And I want everyone to be there. I have a big announcement. Joyce left an hour later, drunk on expensive champagne and gossip. I watched from the window as she immediately pulled out her phone on the sidewalk. She was calling Dennis. I knew it. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Dennis Bennett. I let it ring. I let it go to voicemail. He texted. Brenda, Joyce says you're back. We need to talk. I still love you. I looked at the text and felt nothing but cold amusement. He took the bait, Kelly said, walking into the living room. Hook, line, and sinker, I replied. But the next day, things took a darker turn. Dennis didn't just want to talk. He wanted leverage. I came home from a meeting with my lawyers to find a process server at my door. Brenda Bennett? Yes. He handed me a thick envelope. You've been served. I opened it in the hallway. It was an emergency motion for spousal support and a freeze on all assets. Dennis was claiming that I had hidden millions of dollars during our marriage and that he was entitled to 50% of my European windfall. But the worst part was the attached affidavit. In it, Dennis claimed that I was mentally unstable. That I had a history of erratic behavior. He claimed I was an unfit mother and that he was petitioning for emergency custody of Kelly, even though she was an adult. He was trying to claim she was dependent due to her health issues, arguing I was endangering her by dragging her across the ocean on manic episodes. He was trying to paint me as crazy. He was trying to take my money, my reputation, and my daughter. I walked into the apartment, the papers shaking in my hand. Mom? Kelly asked, seeing my face. He declared war, I said, my voice low and dangerous. He thinks he can use the law to bully me one last time. I walked to my desk and dialed Sterling. He served the papers, I said when he answered. Good, Sterling replied. That means he's desperate. Is everything ready for the party? Yes. Then let him come, Sterling said. Let him walk into the lion's den thinking he's the tamer. The days leading up to the party were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I didn't respond to Dennis's legal threats. I didn't answer his calls. I let silence do the heavy lifting. Silence terrifies a narcissist. It makes them imagine the worst. 2 days before the party, Dennis showed up at my building. I saw him on the security monitor. He was wearing his apology suit, a soft gray cashmere that he knew I used to like. He was holding a bouquet of white lilies. My favorite. Or they used to be, before I realized they were funeral flowers. Mrs. Bennet, the doorman called up. Your husband is here. Let him up, I said. Kelly hid in her bedroom, recording everything on her phone through the cracked door. Dennis walked in, and for a split second, his mask slipped. He looked around the penthouse with naked greed. He took in the marble floors, the modern art, the view. I saw him calculate the square footage in his head. Brenda, he said, his voice husky with fake emotion. He held out the flowers. The place is stunning. Cut the crap, Dennis, I said, leaning against the kitchen island, not taking the flowers. You served me with a lawsuit yesterday calling me mentally unstable. And today you bring flowers? Which is it? Am I your beloved wife or a lunatic? He placed the flowers on the counter, looking suitably chastised. My lawyers, they play hardball. You know that. I didn't want to do it. But you wouldn't talk to me. I was desperate to see you. He walked closer, trying to enter my personal space. I made a mistake, Brenda. Amber, she means nothing. It was a midlife crisis. I panicked when the business failed. I wasn't thinking straight. You seem to think straight enough to wire $500,000 to the Caymans 2 weeks before the crash, I said coldly. Dennis froze. His eyes widened a fraction. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I sipped my water. Maybe I'm imagining it. I am mentally unstable after all. He laughed nervously. Brenda, baby, look. We built a life together. 25 years. You can't just throw that away because of one bad month. I want to come home. I want to help you manage all this. He gestured vaguely at the apartment. You're not good with finances. You never were. You need me. I need you? I raised an eyebrow. Yes. You're an artist, Brenda. You're a creative. I'm the numbers guy. Let me handle the accounts. Let me deal with these investors of yours. I'll make sure they don't rip you off. There it was. He wanted access. He wanted the passwords. He wanted control. I'll think about it, I said, lying through my teeth. Come to the party on Saturday. We can talk more there. In public. The party, Dennis smiled, thinking he had one. I'll be there. As your husband. By your side. Sure, Dennis. By my side. He tried to kiss my cheek. I turned away so his lips hit the air. Saturday, I repeated. Don't be late. When he left, Kelly came out of the room. She was shaking with rage. He tried to gaslight you in your own house, she spat. He wants to steal from you again. He won't get the chance, I said. The next day, Joyce called. So, I heard you and Dennis are talking, she chirped. I'm so happy for you, Brenda. He really loves you. You should forgive him. A woman your age, it's hard to be alone. I'm not alone, Joyce, I said. I have Kelly. And I have money. That's enough company for me. Money runs out, Joyce warned darkly. Family is forever. Family, I echoed. Right. See you Saturday, Joyce. I hung up. The stage was set. The invitations had been sent to the press, to the city's elite, to the prosecutors Sterling had quietly contacted. I looked at the dress I had bought for the night. It wasn't a soft, forgiving dress. It was red. Blood red. Sharp, tailored, and dangerous. I was ready to burn it all down. The morning of the party, the tension broke. Dennis, impatient and greedy, decided he couldn't wait until evening to secure his position. He sent me a text at 8 a.m. Brenda, I've been thinking. If we're going to reconcile tonight, I need a gesture of good faith. Transfer $100,000 to our joint account. I reopened it, so I can pay off the mortgage arrears on the old place. If you don't, I might have to share some interesting stories with the press at your party. Stories about your breakdown and your illegal blood selling in Europe. He was blackmailing me. On the day of my triumph. I showed the text to Kelly. He's digging his own grave. But then, another text came. This one to Kelly. Kelly, honey, your mom isn't well. If she doesn't cooperate, I'm going to have to petition for conservatorship over her. And since you're complicit, you might lose your spot at that fancy school you're talking about. Help me help her. Kelly threw her phone across the couch. He's threatening me now? He's threatening my future? That's it, I said. The calm veneer cracked. The mama bear woke up. I called Arthur. Is everything ready? The trap is set, Mrs. Bennet, Arthur said. The DA is on the guest list. The screen is prepped. The security is briefed. He just threatened Kelly, I said, my voice trembling with adrenaline. Then he has forfeited his life, Arthur said simply. Mr. Vance sends his regards. He says, aim for the head. The hours ticked by agonizingly slow. I spent the afternoon in hair and makeup, transforming myself into armor. I put on the red dress. I clasped the ruby necklace around my neck. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't Brenda the victim. She wasn't Brenda the bankrupt wife. She was Phoenix. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom was filling up. I arrived early, entering through the back. I watched from the mezzanine as the guests arrived. I saw them. Dennis walked in with Joyce on his arm. He was beaming, shaking hands with people he owed money to, acting like the returning king. He looked confident. He thought tonight was his reinstatement into high society. He thought he was going to stand next to me and announce that we were back. Joyce looked smug, whispering to anyone who would listen, probably taking credit for fixing our marriage. Then I saw Amber. She came in separately, looking nervous. Dennis ignored her. He was focused on the prize. I took a deep breath. I touched the ruby at my throat. It's time, I whispered to myself. I walked down the grand staircase. The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. Dennis looked up, his eyes widening with lust and greed. He started to walk toward me, opening his arms. I didn't smile. I walked straight past him to the podium. Welcome, I said into the microphone. My voice boomed across the hall. Thank you all for coming to the launch of Phoenix Crisis Management. Dennis reached the stage. He stood just below me, smiling up like a loyal dog. We're so proud of you, honey, he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. I looked down at him. The room watched. Tonight is about truth, I said. It's about resilience. And it's about identifying the rot that destroys companies and families. I signaled the technician. Let me show you a case study. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. The massive LED screen behind me flickered to life. Dennis was still smiling, confused but trying to look supportive. He thought I was going to show a promo video. Instead, a date appeared on the screen. October 14th, 3:42 a.m. Grainy, black and white footage began to play. It showed the service corridor of the Palmer House Hotel. A figure walked into the frame. He was wearing a trench coat. He looked around nervously, then slipped into the electrical room. A murmur went through the crowd. Dennis's smile faltered. He squinted at the screen. The video cut to a close-up from a different angle. The man's face was clearly visible. It was Dennis. The video cut again. This time, it was a screen recording of a bank transfer. From Elite Events Corporate Reserve to Cayman Holdings A. Davis Trust. Amount $500,000. The murmur turned into a gasp. Dennis turned pale. He took a step back. Brenda? What is this? This, I said, my voice steady and cold, is how Elite Events really failed. It wasn't an accident. It was sabotage. By my CFO. My husband. Turn it off. Dennis screamed, lunging toward the technician. Turn it off. It's fake. It's AI. It's authenticated, I said. By the forensic accountants of the Vance Group. The screen changed again. This time, it was a video of Dennis from yesterday, recorded by the hidden camera in my penthouse. Dennis on screen, you're not good with finances, Brenda. I withdrew my share. We're still legally married. I want half. Then, the audio of the phone call where he threatened me. Are you sleeping with someone? I'll freeze Kelly's accounts. I'll tell the press you're crazy. The crowd was dead silent. The socialites, the bankers, the people who had shunned me, they were staring at Dennis with pure horror. Dennis looked around, trapped. He saw the faces of the people he wanted to impress. He saw Joyce, who was covering her mouth in shock. He saw Amber, who was backing away toward the exit. He snapped. You bitch, he roared, his face turning purple. He charged up the stairs of the stage. You set me up. That money was mine. I earned it dealing with your incompetence. He raised his hand to strike me. The crowd screamed. But he never reached me. Two massive security guards, Sterling's men, stepped out of the shadows. One tackled Dennis midair. He hit the floor with a sickening thud. Get off me! Dennis shrieked, thrashing like a wild animal. She's my wife. She's lying. Then, the doors at the back of the room opened. Four police officers walked in, led by the district attorney himself. Dennis Bennett, the DA announced. You are under arrest for corporate fraud, embezzlement, reckless endangerment, and extortion. The guards hauled him up. His expensive suit was torn. His hair was wild. He looked at me, his eyes bulging. Brenda! Help me! Tell them it's a misunderstanding. We're family. I stood over him, looking down from the podium. I touched the microphone one last time. We were family, Dennis, I said. Now? You're just a case study. They cuffed him. The click of the metal echoed in the silent room. Joyce tried to sneak away, but the spotlight swung to her. And Joyce, I said. My sister. Who took hush money from him while I slept on her couch. You're not under arrest, but you are certainly under review. Joyce froze, her face ashen, as her own husband looked at her with disgust and pulled his arm away from hers. Dennis was dragged out, screaming obscenities, kicking and crying. As I watched the handcuffs click around Dennis's wrists, screaming in vain, and Joyce turning pale and disappearing into the crowd, I felt a heavy stone lift from my chest. If you have listened this far, please like the video and comment the number 1 below, so I know that you are amazing, and I understand that you are accompanying me throughout this journey. Your help is a huge encouragement, cheering me on. Please comment number 1 so I can recognize you, and now, listen to me tell the rest of the story of what happened to these greedy people. The party didn't end with the arrest. In fact, it truly began. Once the trash was taken out, the atmosphere shifted from shock to celebration. People swarmed me. The same people who wouldn't return my calls 6 months ago were now desperate to shake my hand, to apologize, to ask if Phoenix Crisis Management was taking new clients. I navigated the room with Kelly by my side. She was beaming. She held her head high, no longer the scared girl with asthma, but the daughter of a titan. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "We did," I said. In the weeks that followed, justice moved swiftly. The evidence Sterling's team had gathered was watertight. Dennis was denied bail because he was a flight risk, thanks to the Cayman accounts. He pleaded guilty to avoid a 20-year sentence. He got 10 years in federal prison. The forensic accountants recovered about $300,000 of the stolen money from the offshore account. The rest he had spent on amber and bad investments. But I didn't care about the money. I had Sterling's investment. I had my company. Amber testified against him in exchange for immunity. She admitted everything on the stand, how he bragged about ruining me, how he planned to leave me destitute. Seeing her turn on him was a poetic justice all its own. As for Joyce, her punishment was social and personal. Her husband, a decent man who had been manipulated by her lies, filed for divorce when he learned she had taken money from Dennis to spy on me. She lost her comfortable suburban home. The last I heard, she was living in a small apartment 2 towns over, working as a cashier. I went to see her once. I didn't go in. I just sat in my car outside her workplace. I watched her scan items, looking tired and bitter. I thought about going in, maybe offering a hand. But then I remembered the sofa. I remembered her laughing with Dennis on the phone while I cried in the hallway. I put the car in drive and drove away. I had forgiven myself for trusting them, but I hadn't forgotten who they were. Some bridges are meant to be burned so you can never go back. Kelly's asthma improved drastically in the clean air of the penthouse and with proper medical care. She applied to the design program at the university in Zurich. With her portfolio and a letter of recommendation from Sterling Vance himself, she was accepted with a full scholarship. My life had settled into a rhythm of work and peace. But there was one piece missing. 6 months after the party, I received a letter. "Mrs. Bennett, the doctors say I am fully recovered. I find myself bored with the Alps. The air is too thin. I am thinking of visiting Chicago. I hear the architecture is beautiful. And I hear there is a woman there who owes me a dinner. Yours, Sterling." I met him at the airport. He wasn't in a wheelchair this time. He walked off the plane on his own 2 feet, looking healthier than I had ever seen him. He was still thin, but the gray pallor was gone, replaced by a healthy glow. When he saw me, he didn't shake my hand. He hugged me. A real, solid hug. "You look expensive," he teased, looking at my suit. "I learned from the best," I smiled. We spent the next month exploring Chicago. We went to jazz clubs, museums, and yes, we visited the site of my old company. It was a new restaurant now. We stood outside, and I felt nothing. No pain. No regret. Just a sense of closure. "You know," Sterling said one evening as we sat on my balcony, watching the lights of the city. "They call RH0 golden blood because it's universal. It can save anyone with a rare type. But it's also dangerous for the donor. Because if you bleed, Brenda, there are very few people who can save you." He looked at me with those intense blue eyes. I realized something in that hospital bed. I have spent my life building a fortress of money to protect myself. But I was dying alone. You gave away parts of yourself to save others. Your daughter. Me. I did what I had to do, I said. No, Sterling shook his head. You did what you are. You are generous. And that makes you vulnerable. You need someone to watch your back. Someone who understands the value of what you carry inside. He reached into his pocket. I thought he was going to pull out a ring, and my heart stopped. But he pulled out a key. "This is for the villa in Zurich," he said. "It's next to the clinic, but far enough away to be private." I want you to have it. Not as payment, but as a home base. Kelly is there for school. You can visit whenever you want. Or. He paused, looking uncharacteristically shy. Or you can stay there with me. I'm retiring, Brenda. Preston is taking over as CEO next month. I want to travel. I want to see the world not from a boardroom, but from the ground. And I don't want to do it alone. I looked at the key. Then I looked at the man who had helped me rise from the ashes. We weren't two young lovers swept up in romance. We were two survivors. We had both been broken by life, him by sickness, me by betrayal, and we had healed each other. I can't retire, I said, smiling. Phoenix is just taking off. I have clients. Sterling's face fell slightly. But, I added, taking the key. I can open a European branch. Geneva seems like a good central location. Sterling grinned. It was a boyish, dazzling smile. Deal. I look back now at the woman who sat in that plastic chair in the donation center, praying for $40. I want to hug her. I want to tell her that the needle in her arm isn't taking her life away, it's giving her a new one. They say money can't buy happiness. Maybe that's true. But it can buy justice. It can buy safety. And if you're lucky, and if you have the right blood flowing through your veins, it can buy you a second chance at love. My name is Brenda Bennett. I was bankrupt. I was abandoned. I was invisible. Now, I am the woman with the golden blood. And I am worth every single drop. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven Joyce? Or did I do the right thing by driving away? I read every single comment. Until next time. As Brenda's journey comes to an end, her story leaves us with powerful lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the ability to rise above adversity. Life may strip away everything you hold dear, but in those moments of despair, it also offers the chance to rediscover your strength and redefine your purpose. Brenda's transformation reminds us that even when the odds seem insurmountable, we carry within ourselves the power to rebuild, to fight back, and to reclaim what was lost. Her story is a testament to the value of self-belief and the importance of standing firm in the face of betrayal and injustice. It teaches us that our worth is not determined by the opinions of others or the circumstances we endure, but by our ability to persevere, to negotiate for what we deserve, and to protect those we love. Brenda's courage inspires us to see challenges not as endings, but as opportunities to grow stronger and wiser. What do you think? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below, or simply type good if this story resonated with you. Let's celebrate the strength we all carry within ourselves.